Welcome everyone to the LTH product briefing. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sam Flynn, one of the co-founders of Josef Legal. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Nikki. It's great to be here.
Today, we are talking about your brand new exciting product, Josef Q, which is brilliant. So let's go into a little bit about your background and the background generally of the founders of Josef and how Josef as a company came to be founded originally.
Sure. So like many legal tech founders, I was once an attorney. I worked in litigation and I worked in regulatory advisory, which is very relevant to what we'll be talking about today. Josef, which is a no-code automation platform that we license to law firms and corporate legal teams around the world to automate their day-to-day work. So my personal story was that I built a web-based application in Australia, which gave people advice about a particularly tricky area of the law in 2016. Very simple app at the back end, and people answered a few questions and they were given advice on what to do. We had 30,000 users on the first day, 60,000 by the end of the first month. And that's where I fell in love with the legal tech space. So instead of building one tool at a time in relation to every area of the law, we wanted to build a platform that let any subject matter expert build and launch their own automation tools in their area of the law. Now, today, we work with law firms around the world like Gunderson Detmer and K&L Gates. We work with corporate legal teams at companies like L'Oreal, Bupa, Nutanix, and they automate various legal tasks on the platform.
How did Josef Q come about? I mean, Josef as a no-code solution, the way you've just described it, is very much alive and going as a prospering entity. Why develop an entirely new product at this stage?
So it comes from the work that we do with Josef, the no-code platform. Our legal teams build three primary use cases on Josef. The first is document automation tools. The second are workflow automation tools or information gathering tools. So the third category, and this is relevant to Josef Q, are FAQ tools or frequently asked question tools that provide automated answers to frequently asked questions to people across the business or to clients of law firms. Now, we found that our customers were building highly valuable FAQ tools or decision-making tools on the Josef platform. With the advent of generative AI, there was actually a new and potentially better way of building out those FAQ tools. So what Josef Q is part of the Josef platform, but Josef Q leverages the power of large language models, puts it in the hands of subject matter experts, particularly legal teams, compliance teams, HR teams, information security teams, and allows them to build digital Q&A tools in minutes by uploading policies or regulatory obligations. Those tools are then able to be surfaced to the rest of the business or to their clients potentially to allow them to get automated answers in relation to questions about those policies or regulatory obligations.
So is it fair to say that new availability of generative AI or the new advances gave rise to Josef Q?
That is part of it. With recent advances, it really is there. And so this is an exciting new application of large language models. We have partnered in particular with OpenAI on this project. What's potentially more interesting or relevant to your audience is we're taking that powerful technology and we're applying it to a real pain point for them, understanding that answering these questions over and over again feels like a waste of their time and they could be doing more important work. And also on the other side, that regulatory compliance is the number one issue for corporate legal teams.
I really like that it's sort of taking that advanced technology and applying it to a critical use case, which is so helpful to people. Let's jump in and have a look. Is Josef Q available separately as a product, or do people buy Josef and then they have Josef Q?
You can buy them separately or together. Right now, we are launching the tool in beta. So if anyone wants to have a play around with it for free, we encourage them to do so. Just go to q.joseflegal.com and you can sign up.
Fantastic.
Can you see the screen with the privacy policy on it?
I can.
So, as I said, Josef Q is a tool for legal and compliance professionals to digitize and operationalize policies and regulatory obligations. What does that look like in practice? The document on the screen is something that a lot of people who are watching this recording will no doubt be familiar with. It is the privacy policy. If I want to go into this privacy policy and find an answer to one of my questions, I have to first locate the document and then go through the document to find my answer, or potentially, Control F my way through the document. So it's got all the answers to my questions, but it's static. And a lot of people don't go looking for that answer. With Josef Q, what this ends up looking like at the end is this. This is a tool that we've pre-built on Josef Q, and it operationalizes and digitizes that privacy policy. So I can ask any questions I want about the policy. For example, what personal information do you collect from me? And then I get an answer to that question. It's in natural language, it's summarized, it's clear, it's easy to understand. I didn't have to go looking for it, and I didn't have to find the right terminology as well.
By the way, Sam, is it really that fast? That was almost instantaneous.
It is. It's very quick. What about if we ask that in a slightly vaguer way? Do you collect information about my device? Because one of the things that we find with non-experts, whether that's across the business or people outside of the business, they're often not using the language of the compliance professionals, right? Because they don't know it. And so that's one of the really powerful parts of natural language processing and these large language models.
So it's very specifically, in this case, drawing that information from the privacy policy for ABC company, rather than from the whole web at large, for example.
That's right. So one of the core differences here between Josef Q and ChatGPT is that together we have pointed the language model at a very particular and curated data set. For example, we can test this out. We can say, who is Nikki? And it's going to think about it for a second and it's going to say, sorry, I don't have an answer. Whereas if you ask ChatGPT, it might say that, but it also might make up an answer. It might tell you a story.
So you've engineered around that problem of hallucination.
Correct. That's right. Yeah. So that's an example of what it looks like at the front end. Now, I'd like to go through and build out a tool to show people how easy it is to create. Okay, so the policy that I want to automate today is a parental leave policy, speaking to customers about Josef Q, human resources, employment, regulatory environment in relation to employment law, speaking to users of Josef Q. So let's pretend that we are going to build out a digital Q&A tool that provides answers to anyone across a business about their company's parental leave policy. We would jump into Josef Q, which looks like this, and we would do 3 things in order to create the tool. The first thing we need to do is add our knowledge base. And this goes to what we were talking about before. One of the really powerful parts of Josef Q is that we were taking the power of large language models and we are pointing it at a curated data set. This not only removes a lot of the risks of OpenAI or ChatGPT, but it also allows us to be more confident in the answers that the tool will give, which is very important in a legal and compliance context. We can either upload the policy, we can add a URL, or we can paste it as plain text. But here we've got it in a Microsoft Word document, so let's upload it. Our no-code platform is also very easy to use because we designed it so that anyone, not just the usual suspects, could pick it up and start building on it. So we've uploaded the content. We're going to hit analyze and we're going to be taken to step 2, where we train the model. So for anyone not familiar with that term, we are teaching it the kinds of questions that people might ask about this policy so that when it does get time to launch it, it will be better at answering those sorts of questions.
If anyone is wondering whether or not this is the training, the little icon of the weightlifter provides you with that.
So let's ask a few questions. So one might be, how soon after birth do I have to use my parental leave? Let's go to the policy and find the answer to that question. You can take this during the first 2 years of birth, copy and drop it back into the answer field. Second question might be, do I get any leave for IVF? Go to the policy. If you're undergoing IVF treatment, you will be entitled to 2 days of paid IVF leave per year. Copy and paste. Question number 3, who is eligible for leave under the policy? Go back this, and here we have the answer to that question from the policy itself.
Sam, I'm curious as to why this is necessary, given the power of the large language models we're seeing today and the length of the data that you're uploading. Is it necessary to ask these questions, or what does it do that the large language model isn't innately already able to do?
So all this is doing is giving the creator of the tool more control and more confidence that the tool is going to get the answers to these questions. We give our creators of tools, also owners of policies, the ability to jump back in and continue to train the tool, check the answers, make sure that it's giving the answers that they want the tool to give.
So if you knew as an organization, these are the 5 most common questions we get in relation to this policy, you would want to bank those to make sure it got exactly the right answers. I see.
Exactly right. That's exactly what we're doing. So then we're going to hit finalize your Q&A. The third thing we need to do is give the tool a name. It's taken the name from the document we've uploaded, so we can skip that step. And then we're taken to the tool itself. So now we have a parental leave policy Q&A. That's it. That's all you need to do in order to build a digital tool off a set of regulatory obligations, rather than creating a knowledge management tool or decision tree type tool. So let's jump in and ask some questions. Who is eligible for parental leave under the policies? And we've trained it to answer in this way. It has answered in this way, so that's good. But let's test it a little bit further. Let's ask, do I get leave for IVF treatment? And it tells us we get 2 days leave. What about, let's start to use different language. I am undergoing in vitro fertilization. Do I get any leave? And it comes up with the same answer. If we would ask something more nuanced, like, does this policy treat men and women differently? Because someone across the organization might want to know the answer to that question and finds the right answer in the policy and summarizes that for us.
I really like this use case because it's narrow and therefore deals with some of the issues around OpenAI's large language models when they haven't been engineered for specific purposes. So I can see that people would feel confident in this, that they are able to trust it, which obviously is so important, especially when it comes to compliance.
What's really exciting about Josef Q for me is that it's taking the power of the large language model, but applying it in a real and valuable context.
And Sam, one of the problems with policies internally, I imagine, is not just that people ask questions and they don't bother to actually read the policies, but also it can be difficult sometimes to find policies in an organization, say on an intranet where there are many, many folders and subfolders and you're not quite sure which page it appears on. Where can people put the Q&A bot?
So as a digital tool, it can be embedded anywhere where people currently go to look for that information or where they're working. So that could be as simple as a link. It could be an iframe embedded in a SharePoint page. There are lots of options. After the beta period, one of the first projects that we'll be working on is integrations. So surfacing this through tools that people use like Slack and Teams.
That's great. And I saw that there was a character limit for the beta period. Once the beta is up, will people be able to say upload all of an organization's policies?
Exactly. So we've limited it for the beta period because we're giving hundreds of people free access to the tool, and that comes at a cost to us. But after the beta period, there will be no limit, or the limit will be much higher. I want to show one more thing, which is in the parental leave policy, if we ask who is Nikki, it's not going to give us an answer because it's not searching the web like ChatGPT. It's only searching the information that we uploaded to Josef Q. This is a really important part of the tool. If I go back to the settings page where we're training the tool, I can see all of the questions that have been asked and answered here. That not only gives me confidence and the ability to make sure that it's providing the right answers to questions that people are asking. So if I jump in here and change the answer to this question, we can say Nikki is the co-founder of Legal Tech Hub. And then we go back to view. I should then be able to ask who is Nikki, and it gives me that answer. So it's constantly learning and getting better over time.
I love that. I can imagine for HR teams, for example, in companies to be able to go in and see, actually this one question has been asked an inordinate number of times. We must have a really good answer for it, and being able to edit it. That's brilliant. And it looks so easy to use. I mean, I feel like you would deploy it all over the place. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us today and showing us Josef Q. For those who are interested in knowing more about Josef Q, we will put a URL at the bottom of the screen so that you're able to reach out to the Josef team and inquire further. Sam, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nikki.